I want to talk to you today about an important subject, and it has to do with emotional health and the idea that I'm a therapist and I have insights that I've gained not only through my own life, but through my therapy practice. And one of those insights was actually a surprise to me. When I went to grad school to become a therapist, I really thought I'd be this pragmatic, cognitive behavioral therapist that sort of dealt with logic and things that are happening in the here and now. And I was never a big believer in this idea of childhood having this big effect on adulthood. I really didn't believe it. But over the past almost 20 years, I've changed my mind. I do think childhood experiences have a great deal of impact on your day-to-day life as an adult. In some cases, some really surprising ways. We all know that if we have traumatic experiences in childhood, they're apt to have an effect, but that's not what I'm talking about today. When we're children, we develop a belief system about ourselves and about the world. And mostly we get that information from our caregivers and our parents. And I'm going to give you an example of a belief system that I adopted in childhood and brought with me into adulthood on a subconscious level, and it caused me some problems. Let me tell you what it was. We need to travel back in time to 1965 when I was 5 years old. And my dad was a single father, and I loved my dad. I loved spending time with my dad. And the greatest thing that we did together was once a week after dinner, he would go to the grocery store to do the week's shopping, and he would take me with him. I loved everything about the grocery store. I loved everything about spending time with him. It was almost always the pinnacle, the most exciting part of every week that I had. There was only one rule, and that was at dinner, I had to eat everything on my plate. If I didn't eat everything on my plate, I couldn't go. And you wonder, well, why is that? Well, the explanation for that is my father grew up, he was a teenager, an early teenager during the Great Depression. And clean everything on your plate, eat everything 100% was a big deal during those times. Most Americans don't fully understand or fully appreciate the depth of the suffering that the average American was doing during the Great Depression. Food was hard to come by. It was very difficult, so it was taken very seriously. And there's no way back then that you left anything on your plate wasting food. It was a huge deal. So my dad took that belief from his child with him into adulthood. And that explains why he had that rule with me. Well, I didn't have much of a problem following that rule. I was kind of a roly-poly, let's just say I was kind of a tubby little kid, and I had a big appetite. But there was one time I remember clearly when I was 5 years old, and I could not finish my dinner. As much as I wanted to, I don't know what was going on, but I do remember the sensation. I remember where I was sitting, and at the end of the table, my usual spot, and I could not fit, I couldn't do it. And I remember sitting at the table doing that kind of sobbing and crying where you can't catch your breath because I was listening to the sound of my father's car drive away into the distance without me to the grocery store. Well, I made sure that that never happened again. I valued that time with my father so much. Well, over the years, I forgot about that. And I went into adulthood. And let me just say, it may not look exactly like it now because I've done a pretty good job recently of controlling my weight, but that has not been the case for the vast majority of my adult life. I've struggled with weight and had fluctuations of 60 pounds up, 60 pounds down, 40 pounds up, 30 pounds down. It's been a mess my entire life, and it's a very unhealthy thing. But one of the things that I realized was going on, and I didn't realize it was going on until I really got into this belief systems in childhood thing. I was in my 50s by the time I realized this. I developed the habit of finishing everything that was served to me, whether it was at home in a restaurant. And it was an automatic process. It was subconscious. I didn't know why I was doing it. I just did it. And over time, I believe I disconnected that part of your brain that says, Rob, you're full, stop eating, to the act of eating. There was a disconnect. So instead of stopping to eat when I was full, I would continue to eat because the priority of finishing exceeded the priority in my brain of stopping when I was full. And I'm not saying this caused my overweight problems. It certainly was not the primary cause, but it was definitely a significant contributing factor. And once I realized this, it was fairly simple to do something about it. I thought about my dad and where it came from, and I realized that Dad had no ill intent. It was almost a subconscious process from his childhood belief. My dad meant well, didn't mean to cause any harm. I totally don't have a problem with my father for this. But I realized I need to break this belief. And so what I did was I would be very careful at home with my portions and give myself, someone says it takes about 10 minutes for your brain to catch up with your stomach. So eat the reasonable portion. And if you want more, you can have more, just wait 10 minutes. And that worked at home. And in restaurants, you don't really control the portions. So what I did in restaurants initially was when my food was delivered, I would ask for a to-go box. And I would slice off a piece of whatever it was I'm eating and put it away in the box. And then I could comfortably eat everything on my plate because a big part of it wasn't on my plate. And then that evolved into, now I'm able to go to a restaurant, stop when I'm full, ask for a to-go bag or box, and put the remainder in there. And I've resolved that belief. Now, this is a really good example of how a childhood belief can get embedded into your subconscious and really have an adverse effect on your day-to-day life as an adult. For me, for decades, until I was 50 years old, this was a problem that I didn't understand what the problem was. I didn't understand that the problem existed, and I certainly didn't understand where it came from. Now, there are belief systems that people have that are much more devastating than overeating. They're very serious things. And what I've discovered is that inevitably, when I work with a client that has a cyclical, repetitive kind of problem or issue, inevitably, I will find that the basis for it or the root cause of it is a dysfunctional belief from childhood that they may not even be aware of. And there are ways, as I described, to break those beliefs, break out of destructive thinking and negative emotions associated with that and the negative outcomes associated with that, and reinvent that part of yourself as I did. So I hope you've gotten something out of this video. This is something that initially, when I started my training, I didn't believe this stuff. I believe it now because I've seen it with my clients over and over again, and I've experienced it for myself personally. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you like the beautiful setting I'm in Nevada. I really love this place. And anyway, I will see you on the next video. I have plenty of them actually there's a whole list of them in YouTube on my playlist I think it's called Emotional Health Videos, a playlist. And also on my website, www.robwakely.com. I'll put it at the bottom here. There's a video section, and they're all emotional health videos on a variety of topics that I found to be helpful both for myself and for my clients. Take care.